Many thanks to Joanna for coming to talk to us about British Sign Language. Her extensive professional experience of teaching sign language over many years has given us good insights of the importance of BSL. It is clear that more needs to be done to support hearing impaired children. How? Why? Watch the video and see if you can come to the same conclusion. Joanna, welcome to the NAPE YouTube site. We're most grateful you could come to talk to us today about the British Sign Language, indeed all areas of children with hearing impairment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Joanna, could you tell us, how did you sort of arrive at this point in terms of the work you now do?
Well, I now teach to adults. I teach lip reading and basic sign language, but I've actually worked within deaf charities since the mid-90s and have run 2 different deaf centres supporting all age groups, adults and children, with hearing loss and profound deafness. So I became quite proficient in sign language and indeed managed deaf staff. So I've actually used sign language as a professional for a long time, and I retired from being CEO of Deaf Connect in Northampton in 2020, and decided that I didn't need to just sit and twiddle my thumbs, and so I went back to doing my lip reading teaching, which I trained to do in the 90s. And then was asked to also teach basic sign language, which is what I've been doing.
Let's sort of dig a little bit deeper into BSL, as it's known. What actually is BSL? What does it do? How does it work?
British Sign Language is a full language. It is like any language, like English or French or German. It is a complete language, but it's a very descriptive language. It uses all visual signs to describe things. It has a very different structure to English in that it actually builds a picture in signs. So you don't start with the cup is on the table. You actually start with the table and then the cup being on top of it because you're building a whole picture.
Right.
So yes. It's a different structure, very different syntax to English. But the various sign languages around the world are all very similar in structure because that's the way that sign language builds in all sign languages.
Yeah. Okay. And why do only a few children use sign language, who could clearly have need of it?
The main reason is that 90% of deaf and hard of hearing children are born to hearing parents. And consequently, the language spoken in the family is generally a verbal language and not sign language. Only 10% of those parents ever learn sign language, and often not to a proficient degree. And my benchmark is, can you argue with your teenager in sign language? And if you can't, I don't think you've actually learned enough. But most people never get past level 1, which is a low-level grade GCSE. Yes. So you're not proficient enough. And consequently, the majority of parents want their children to be oral, so they go down the technology route, which is generally offered to them by audiology and the other professionals that they end up dealing with. So they end up having cochlear implants or very heavy-duty hearing aids, and therefore they're all pushing towards being oral. And so often, though, the child will struggle to communicate in school, and the teachers are in the best position to actually work out whether the child is actually understanding and making themselves understood. They often then don't attain very good grades, and this is that they all come in slightly below hearing children. But the reality is deaf children have the cross section of ability that hearing children would have. So therefore, they should really be sort of midway in that cohort that they're in. But if that's the case, well, then maybe the schools should be encouraging the use of sign language. But that becomes quite expensive for the schools. But it is something that the older children who I've dealt with, I've seen them grow from baby through to sort of teens. And those children actually say, why did I never get taught sign language? I would have learned so much had I have done. But it starts with the parent wanting oral.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty bleak picture that you're painting for us. So I've often heard about Makaton. What is the difference between Makaton and BSL?
Makaton is a basic form of BSL. What you've actually got is you've got British Sign Language, which is the language that I talked about with the different structure. Then you've got sign-supported English, which is a language that actually uses the signs at the same time as speaking. So it's the structure is English, but the signs are from the BSL vocabulary. Then you've got Makaton, and Makaton is actually one sign that has been chosen by a professional for each thing. Whereas in both sign-supported English and in BSL, you've got regional dialects of sign language. So, if you move around the country, you find that there are different signs for different things. So the one I can think about immediately is 10, 10, 10. And they are all regional dialects. But what Makaton do is Makaton actually chooses one of those that they believe is the most appropriate for people with learning difficulties. And professionals have got together and made the decision about which signs are going to be used by Makaton. And they've then created a dictionary which they train professionals who are dealing with people with learning difficulties. But it is a definitive dictionary. It doesn't flow in the same way that sign language does, because this is the dictionary that we're going to use. But it doesn't have the breadth and the beauty of the descriptive signs within Makaton. It doesn't have the emotion signs to the same degree. It is a very basic language for people with learning difficulties to be able to express themselves at their level.
I mean, on television, you see a lot of signing nowadays. Which language are they using there?
They're using BSL. So the person in the bottom of the screen.
Yes, that's right.
Translating into BSL, which is why often the person who's actually doing the speaking will be speaking away and the sign language interpreter will be holding fire, because they've actually got to wait for the person to get to the point so that they can then work out what needs to be described. So English starts somewhere in the middle, whereas the sign language starts with this picture. The language actually starts with the room in which something is happening, or the place in which something is happening. Indeed, it actually starts with the time, because there's no tenses in sign language. So it starts with the time. So it would say yesterday in the dining room there was a chair and the cat was on the chair, as opposed to we'd say there was a cat on the chair yesterday in the dining room or something.
It's almost a reverse, isn't it?
It's more of a continental sort of structure. So you put all of the things, the nouns at the beginning of the sentence. The time comes first, then the where, then the nouns, and then you're describing the nouns. So it's more like a continental language than it is English.
Well, that's good to hear for all those linguists out there. Now, if I was a primary school teacher, which I was many years ago, and I suddenly had a new pupil who had hearing impairment of one type or another, how would I go about starting to communicate with that child? What would I need to do?
I think the first thing you'd need to find out is exactly how much the child hears,
Yeah,
because with a hearing aid they actually hear a lot. You would just need to make sure that they were constantly and kept informed that things were moving on in the classroom. You didn't turn your back on them, so that you could actually communicate face to face. If you've got a child who has no hearing despite the hearing aids, and the hearing aids only give them sort of like the environmental noises but not speech bands, you would need to start looking at sign language. And sign language is a full language. Just to learn how to finger spell the alphabet and deal with the numbers and do a few greetings would take 3 hours at least. So you're not going to get very proficient unless you go off and do a sign language course. And to get to this, low level GCSE, it takes a year. So it's not going to happen overnight. There are videos online, there are pictures online. Indeed, Twinkl has got a pack that can go out. But because sign language is a moving language, having a picture doesn't always help unless you've seen the sign. So if somebody had a profoundly deaf child who needed sign language, I would recommend going and learning sign language. But for a teacher, by the time you've actually got to GCSE level, the child has moved on to the next class, unless it's for secondary school. But primary, it's one teacher, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, indeed. And of course, teaching assistants are becoming very rare in primary schools. Tell me, you mentioned a year. I mean, how many hours does that really involve in that year?
To get to level 1, it takes you 64 hours of tutored study and 26 hours of private study, so 90 hours. But when you consider that gets you to a low level GCSE, you don't have fluent communication. So in terms of the language that's there, I would actually not be recommending somebody with level 1 to try and use it in a teaching situation, unless you are only dealing with the smallest ones, reception, maybe year 1, because you don't have the level of language to communicate and push their understanding forward.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah, and the subjects are very basic that you end up learning. It's it's the family and clothes, colours, and directions and the weather, and it's not the full breadth of language, because you're learning a language.
You are, and as you say, language itself is complex, and then to turn that into movement is, to me, very, very complex. So
once
you urge you, that's the way to go.
Yeah, once you get into sign language, though, it starts making sense. Start making sense, because there is generally a reason for a sign to have actually come about. And if you can get that, your hands then start behaving themselves a little bit better. But initially, you have to train them to behave themselves.
Yes, that sounds like very good advice to me. So could you possibly, just to finish off, demonstrate some signing for us to communicate, often used in phrases?
The initial one is hello. We can all do hello. Welcome, which is welcome.
Yeah.
How are you? Where you stroke your hands across your chest and you go, how are you? How are you? But you have to show that you're interested in your face as well, because it's not only your hands, it's your face as well. So a big smile is going to break down a lot of barriers with a deaf child. But how are you is a good one. And then my name, and then you'd have to learn the finger spelling alphabet. But mine is Joanna. Joanna.
Ah, right. I need to learn that. Don't think I can do it this evening.
Well, there are lots of videos on YouTube that will help you learn the fingerspelling alphabet.
Okay, I'll put those in the description anyway for people to pick
Yes.
up to have a look at.
Yeah.
But you need to have your finger on the pause almost to go backwards and forwards to make sure, and then wind it back. And I suppose that's the advantage.
On YouTube, if you go into the settings, the cog at the bottom, it actually allows you to play back more slowly.
Slowly. That's
and
a very
that
good
with sign language helps hugely.
Right. Okay. I might even try it on this video. Right.
do because it makes a big difference. It does have the signing a little bit like this, but it does actually help you to understand what's happened with the hands.
Yes, I think I'd make very good use of that. Was there anything else you wanted to add today? I know it's been a very short period of time, but is there anything that we've, I won't say missed, because I know we've missed a lot, but is there anything you wanted to add at this point?
I just wanted to add that the main charity that supports parents, and I would hope teachers as well, is the National Deaf Children's Society. They have an awful lot of information and advice. They support parents with social groups and things from babyhood onwards. They try and get parents together as well as children together. And they're the ones who actually collect the statistics about attainment for deaf children. So I'm assuming that they've actually got people who are interested in supporting the education of deaf children, and it would be worth contacting them.
Yes, I'll put the link below and also in the description, because I know they've got a number of resources for parents and schools to use. So that's very, very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. And unless there's anything else you want to add, can I thank you, Joanna, for today's video. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.